Hello friends, welcome for joining us. This is Beyond the News. I'm Jim Grant. This show is being pre-recorded on the 12th of June, be going out a couple of weeks later. I should say that anyone in the Sussex area, I'm a comic. If you want to ever come see me live, I'm at the Counting House the first Sunday of every month, and I'll be in Eastbourne. That's in Eastbourne, Counting House, Motecroft Road, Eastbourne, and I'll be at a wonderful place that's it's a fast food place, but it all does its own burgers and everything like that. A place called Biob down in Terminus Road. I'll be there on Wednesday, July the 3rd as well, if you ever want to come see me live. So that's the adverts out the way. We're going to be coming up on today's show. We've got a continuing coverage of the Bilderberg Festival that happened between the 6th and the 9th. We've done that in the last couple of shows, so we won't spend the whole show on it, but there's a couple more things I want to show. And then we'll get into Dr. Graham Hancock. If you Google who he is, you'll recognise his face if you've ever watched any sort of programmes with, you know, interesting alternative histories. I'm not saying I agree with all his theories, but he was asked to give a speech at the TED thing, you know, the TED speaking conferences that go around the world and that kind of stuff. And he gave one, and it was censored, so we're going to hear what he was talking about and what he was saying about. So without any further ado, we're going to go to David Icke's speech where he addressed thousands at Bilderberg. Now, on this show, anyone that listens and does the research will see that there's a corporate government in place that sort of top-down controls all three parties and brings in legislations and brings in an agenda on both sides of the Atlantic. Republicans, Democrats, they own, and top end always. There are good people at the bottom end, but they bring an agenda to basically take away our civil liberties, reduce us down to nothing more than prisoners, and take our money. That's the basic idea. It's called the New World Order. Some people have different names for it. Now, David Icke has theories as to why they do these things. I'm not going to go there on this show, but I don't ridicule him for having them. He's had a lot of information over the years that you'd think to begin with, whoa, that sounds weird, and it turns out to be true. There's some still information now which you think, whoa, that sounds weird. And you may not necessarily agree with it, but if you can imagine overlapping circles, if you have sort of different circles and you overlap them, you'll find that the main crux of what different people agree with in the truth movement is the basic ideas of the corporate top-down structure, to the agenda, and how they implement it through groups like Bilderberg. And so this is the speech identifying this that he gave at the thousands at the Bilderberg protest over the weekend, 6th to the 9th, outside the Grove, which was fantastic. So I like hearing it because I think it's very important. And but when you go down the road of saying, if you're someone, you've put Icke on the show, you must agree with all his theories, I don't think you're thinking how you should think. You should think to yourself, I'm going to be open-minded to everything, and just because I agree or disagree with something that someone says doesn't mean I'm then going to agree with everything they say or disagree with everything they say. You should take each fact that each person says on its own merit and do its own research for itself. So if someone says something that you disagree with, it doesn't mean that you should ignore everything else that they say. When you go down that road of closed-mindedness, and any time that you're closed-minded and you have a prejudicial opinion, you are not doing yourself justice. You should think for yourself, ask questions for yourself, do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and you will then find that you agree with some people and disagree with others. That's why if someone I'm not in the paradigm of left or right, it really doesn't interest me. I'm for common sense, and sometimes common sense would be into the traditional left-wing paradigm. So for examples of that would be the legalization of marijuana. People should say, it's bad for you, it does this, it does that, it does that. You know, I'm not going to argue on that front. I argue from the civil liberties aspect that I should, or anyone should have the right to put into their body whatever they like. Simple as that. I'm not going to debate them whether it's harmful, whether it's good, whether it possibly cures cancer, whether obviously smoking with tobacco is a carcinogen, but other forms of getting into the body cures cancer. I'm not going to go down that route. I'm not going to argue with someone who says it will make someone that's mentally ill even more mentally ill. I'm not going to go down that route. I'm not going to argue with them because I can't. they're probably right. Can't prove it one way or the other, but they're probably right. What I'm going to argue is, hey, everyone has the right to put into their body whatever they wish. Now, that doesn't mean they could be able to smoke it in public areas, because then you're sort of passive smoking on someone else and you're doing potential harm to someone else. So you don't have the right to do that. But in the comfort of your own home, you should be able to have the right to put into your body whatever you wish. And again, you shouldn't be allowed to drive on it. You shouldn't, because you could potentially harm others. You could possibly argue that you shouldn't be able to look after children on it. So there's different avenues that you can go down and argue it left and right. But the basic premise is that you should be able to do it. But on the other hand, some people might call me right-wing because I'd like a visa-style immigration policy. I wouldn't like to see an open-door policy. I don't think we should be ruled by the EU. We should have the right to vote on whatever we like within our sovereign nations, because if you have small sovereign nations, they act as firewalls against tyranny. So, for example, you can't have a top-down tyranny introduced all across Europe, because different countries would say, I like this, I don't like this, and that's the way it should be. And a good example of this is our House of Parliament MPs, we've covered this on the show in previous broadcasts, were told, you definitely have to give, the EU told them, you definitely have to give us 350 million a year increase, and you don't have the right to say whether you should or whether you shouldn't. You have to give it to us. Well, I think that's wrong. The British people should, by way of who they vote in, should be able to decide where their money goes. Europe shouldn't be able to dictate to them that we should have to give them £350 million, and we should close down our schools and hospitals to do it. It should be up to the British people to decide where that 350 million goes. Otherwise, what's the point of democracy? So that's a traditional right-wing paradigm view. So, for example, that's where I am on traditional politics. I look at common sense. I want freedom. I want liberty. I want democracy at the most locally accountable level, because that's how you get things done the best. And I'll give the example again. If this isn't a practical way of ruling, I just want to use it as an example to get across my point. If every long street in this country had democratically elected official and they changed them weekly, and the person at the end of that street got the free house to live in, that was the public servant, they're effectively their town councillor or whatever like that, I bet you that street would be clean. Do you see my point? If they're able to be outed every week, and you can go down to the end of the week and say to them, I'm not happy with you, you should clean that up, or you lose your free house, you can bet your bottom dollar that street is going to be clean. So that's my view. It's obviously not a practical way of ruling, but I'm using it to illustrate a point. So my point as regards to David Icke is, I don't agree with everything he says, but I agree with some of it, and here's some of the stuff mostly in this speech that I do, and I found it very inspiring, and that's why I'm going to play it and have a look at his work. I'm not saying he's right, I'm saying have a look at his work, see what you think, make up your own mind. So here he is. David Icke addresses thousands at Bilderberg protest. You can see it on YouTube for yourself.
Three things that are vital to the few controlling the many. One is to keep the many in ignorance of what they're doing. That is now being put right by the alternative media and the communication of this information. A second one is the population being kept in acquiescence, the many kept in acquiescence to the few. That's the next one we need to sort out. Stop acquiescing. We need to come together and have a mass, non-violent, non-cooperation campaign the world over, in which we refuse to cooperate with our own enslavement. Because only if we refuse to cooperate with our own enslavement is it possible for the few to do this to the many. And there's the third thing they absolutely desperately want. And that is divide and rule.
Just wanted to make a quick point on the point I made earlier, it's just in my brain, on the marijuana issue. You should, of course, never sell it to children. That shouldn't be allowed either. So, like I said, there's all little different intricacies, but I just wanted to say that then. I always try and be careful about what I say on air, because I want it to sort of reach as many people as possible and not upset as many people as possible, but at the same time, stand up for what I believe in and give you straight answers on what I believe. So, just wanted to get that point across, and we're back to David Icke now.
They cannot do it without that. And look at it. We divided as a world on the fault lines, the manufactured fault lines of religion and culture and race and all the rest of it, and income bracket. And, They're picking each section off while the other one looks the other way and says, it's not my problem. Well, a man said something like this after the Nazi years in Germany. First they came for the Jews and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists. I was not a communist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the trade unionists. I was not a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. That is what they're doing now. Oh, it's the Muslims. Let's demonize the Muslims. Let's demonize the poor. Let's demonize people with one bedroom too many when they're on benefits. Let's demonize everyone. Turn the rest of them against them, and when the demonized ones have been picked off, then we'll come for you. This is what is happening, and we need to come together. Open the heart, open the mind, irrespective of religion, race, I don't care. We are all one consciousness having different experiences. Now we have got to the key. And the key is that we are infinite awareness, all the same consciousness having different experiences, but we have to be persuaded and manipulated by what that represents, that we are just our name, our body, and our life story. We are not. They are experiences. They're not.
And just to talk about my experience, again, when I said in favour of visa-style immigration, that isn't to say I'm against immigration, full stop. Some immigration is a wonderful thing. I would love to be able to go and work in other countries and stuff like that. So sensible immigration based on whether someone's has a skill set to come into the country is great. Students should be allowed to study here. Temporary work agreement should be allowed there. So I'm not, anti-immigration, full stop. Sensible immigration, visa point style immigration that some other countries abroad use. Just wanted to clarify that. Again, you always have to be very careful because people will always be on your heels ready to attack you. So that's why I sort of cover my backside, if you like. And back to David Icke.
Not who we are. When we identify and self-identify with name, income bracket, a life story, etc., we see the world and ourselves in terms of little me. I'm just little me. I'm just Joe Bloggs, Fred Jones. Who am I? What can I do? But when you get to that point where you expand your awareness, you expand the memory of what we already know.
And just to expand the memory of what you know of what I've just said, it would also help immigration if we stopped bombing these poor people's countries. And then they'd have less reason to leave as well, with all our illegal wars.
Then you realise there are no little me's. There's only a perception, here we go again, of little me. And we must keep that perception if we're going to be controlled by the few. We are infinite awareness, all that has been, ever can be, and ever anything can be. The same single awareness. We need to stop fighting each other and come to this conclusion. If we're one consciousness, then anybody else's injustice becomes our injustice. No more looking the other way. It's so simple. If you see a problem, you can try to find a solution to it. We're drowning in those blooming things. So why don't we do the sensible thing, which is to remove the cause of the problem? The cause of the problem is we have been having our perception programmed into little me, and we've forgotten that we are infinite awareness. All that it can be, is, and ever will be. Therefore, to remove the cause of the problem, we start to self-identify again. Who is I? What is the I? No, it's not Charlie Jones. It's infinite awareness, infinite power, infinite love, infinite capacity to dictate our own reality instead of having it dictated to us. This is the power we have. We have the power. That's a house of cards. The people it's manipulating, silly sods, are the ones that are holding it up there. We need to stop doing that, and there'll be a very loud bang, and it will be over. And this is a major, major step to that loud bang. We're reaching we're reaching now, you know, I don't quote Churchill very much for many reasons, but one thing he said, I think it was in 1942 at the State of the War, he said, "This is not the end, nor even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning." I suggest that this moment marks the end of the beginning. And that beginning has been to bring vast numbers of people, and that needs to continue, my goodness, into an awareness that the world was not like they thought it was, and it's not run by forces that they thought it was run by. That's now reached clearly a point all over the world, and my goodness, I can tell you because I work on it all day, the bloody graph is going skywards in terms of people waking up to their true nature. And now, along with continuing that, we need to go to stage 2. And that is to cease to acquiesce and cease to submit with that which we're now aware of. No more fear of authority. No more fear of anything. And you know, people in uniform here, people in uniform here. You have children and grandchildren that are going to have to live in the world that I'm describing, and that which you are protecting. Not that it needs to be. We don't want any problem, but we don't do what they do there. We don't manipulate the world to more slaughter and more control and more imposition of the will of the few on the many. You've got to start to realize that you are part of us, and start to break down those barriers and stop working for your children and grandchildren's own enslavement by keeping these people from the public eye. I say that to soldiers, troops, you're going abroad to lands with brown faces and you are devastating them, not for your country, but for those that are controlling your country, dictating to your country, and seeking to enslave your country for your children and grandchildren. Put your weapons down. Refuse to do it. This is the next stage where we stop playing a part in the enslavement of ourselves. And you know, there was a mantra song that I came across a long time ago, which just had 4 lines, so appropriate now. It went, we are the power in everyone. We are the dance of the moon and the sun. We are the hope that will never hide. We are the turning of the tide. And so we are. And it's so clear today that that tide is starting to move. And this is the last thing I'll say in terms of where we're at, to put it in perspective. We here outnumber the 140 by a very large margin. Let's just visualize that. People here in front of me massively outnumber the 140 who are orchestrating the direction of the world on behalf of masters that they are terrified of. Now, take this and imagine 7 billion people, and those 140 are doing that to them. What did I say? What did I say earlier? The world is mad. The world is a complete inversion of itself. And what we need is a peaceful, non-cooperative campaign. The non-comply dance, as I call it. Peaceful because we ain't joining them. You can have revolutions, and history is littered with them, where violent revolutions remove a tyranny, and what follows is another form of tyranny. You do not create a peaceful society, a loving society, a caring society, and a just society with violence. We can do this peacefully. And we have the numbers. As the poet Shelley said, rise like lions after slumber, with unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew. Wishing sleep have fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
Thank you, David. And now, it was also good to see so many mainstream people at the Bilderberg Festival, and they had a chance to interview Alex Jones, who got some very interesting points out. Now, I don't watch TV anymore, but I recognise this guy as quite an important news presenter from my memory from shows he used to present before. Alas, I can't remember which channel he's from. I know it's from one of the main ones, so that's good that this stuff's I don't know whether this stuff was aired, because this is such powerful stuff. I don't know whether the corporate mainstream media would be allowed from the powers on up to put it out. And of course, we know a lot of the people high on up in the media attend or have minions that attend Bilderberg, so who knows. But it was good to see him there, and this is the interview. I don't know whether this went out on any mainstream media or not, but Alex Jones was interviewed by the mainstream media, and he said some interesting stuff. I don't know whether it was put out, so in case it wasn't, here's the full interview for you. Like I said, I think this interview is excellent, but I don't know his name or what channel he works for, but I remember him for the TV from when I used to watch it years ago, so here he is.
It's been our job and our main goal just to expose there are powerful lobbying groups and organizations like Bilderberg above government that are transnational that come in and basically lobby governments to give them corporate bailouts, to buy weapons systems. There's all sorts of collusion going on here. There were Lockheed Martin investigations in the 70s. That's why the founder, Prince Bernhard, had to step down. There's just all sorts of shady goings on, price fixing, you name it. Over the years, via WikiLeaks, but before that, even the BBC and others broke a lot of news out of Bilderberg where they were indeed inside setting policy. And they've refused Freedom of Information Act request as well, saying that policy is being made. But then the Bilderberg Group separately says policy is not being made. The Bilderberg Group is basically a world shadow government. It is a legendary organization within government, within people in Congress and your parliament. They all know about it. They all lust to be invited. Because if you get invited here, you end up being president or prime minister. But then, meanwhile, they tell the public it doesn't exist. Well, in the past, the New York Times, just 4 years ago, said that I was in Chantilly at a Bilderberg meeting covering it, and that it was imaginary, that I imagined helicopters and Secret Service and black vehicles. And they told their readers that I had a full-on insane breakdown and that it didn't exist. But we had all the YouTube videos. I made a film that was seen more than 40 million times online, The Obama Deception, showing it all, so they were discredited. So I've never seen such a news blackout as we have in the United States. It's been better here, but the dam has broken on the blackout of Bilderberg. You've got your prime minister coming here today. That shows that they've gone from trying to be secret, so they're not under the light of publicity, to now saying, okay, we're no big deal. We're kind of like a G20 meeting.
It's a curious coalition here. Not everybody's going to agree with some of your, say, politics as stated in America on other issues. I mean, there's some fairly left-wing voices here. You're hardcore libertarian. How do you map through those differences?
Well, I'm really a populist who does believe in libertarian ideas when they're actually brought forth from the grassroots. And so,
there's loads of left-wingers here who probably thought Obama was a bit of a hero. You don't agree with those guys, do you?
Hey, let me ask you think Obama's a hero? Hey, do you think George Bush is a hero? Okay, no. People are fed up. They know the system is a fraud.
See, I think that's an important point to make. Because people I often say, all Obama's crimes, and we'll look at some of, if we have time, that brings me an idea. I'll see if I can point out some of the hypocrisies of Barack Obama. I'll whack them on after this interview and maybe move Graham Hancock to the interview to next week or something. I don't sort of script this stuff. I'll take it where I feel I want to go on live air, and I'll show you some of Obama's hypocrisies. But it's also to point out that's the paradigm. They automatically think, that's why I call it the pro wrestling match. If you think that you dislike one politician, they think that you're automatically for the other. breaking the paradigm is breaking that. I think Obama was a criminal and George Bush was a criminal. I think they both need to be put before a jury of their peers and tried for a number of crimes, and also a bipartisan subcommittee of Republicans and Democrats in the United States agrees. I would also say that the vast majority of the British public that I talk to, whether they're aware of the New World Order agenda, the Bilderberg Group or not, think that Tony Blair should be put before a jury of his careers for war crimes as well. And they don't think much of David Cameron either. So that's what we call the paradigm, the pro wrestling match. It's important to point out, just because you dislike the blue party doesn't mean you like the red, and vice versa. So I think that's an important point Alex made there.
They know it's a scam. They know there's people above prime ministers and presidents that are pulling the strings. We want to talk about the puppeteers, not the puppets. And that's what's happening, is really an end of the naivety. What we're seeing happen is an end of the incredible naivete of the general public to actually believe the media and the government when they say there's no secret rooms, there's no manipulation going on. When there's been...
It's not secret anymore, is it?
No, but they tried to keep it secret. They tried to have media they controlled for decades say it didn't exist, or now that it doesn't have any power, or those of us that criticize it are conspiracy theorists. When we've gotten their minutes, we know they created the European Union as a system to implode countries under corporate governance. We know that they lobbied years before for the Iraq War I and Iraq War II and tried to create the climate so that those wars would happen. This is about as evil as you get on this planet. This is a global corporate government that is trying to take over the entire planet. They're not in full control yet, but they are a world government that is basically learning to walk right now, and it wants to run.
Right now, on the day that this meeting's happened, we've had this story that the National Security Agency in your country, in America, has got access to all sorts of US data, tech company data. Some of the tech bosses are in there. What's your kind of response to that development? Do you trust data in your own country from these large tech companies?
For 18 years on air, I've exposed that all communications in the Western world, whether it's the EU, the UK, or the United States, run through hubs and are recorded. In the old days, it was just text, they say. This is all in Congress. The media just wouldn't touch it because we're free countries. We're not recording you. And now they come out and say, you know what, we've audio recorded everything you've said the last decade, so watch it. This is the establishment coming out and saying, you bet we're listening, and you bet if you criticize us, the IRS is going to come and we're going to audit you. So sit down and shut up, peasants. That's what's happening. And I was called a conspiracy theorist on national U.S. TV. Alex Jones says the government's spying on you without warrants and recording your phone calls. When it was in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, $9 billion to fund the upgrade of huge computer hubs in all telecommunications to record everything. They have giant NSA bases down the street from my house in Austin, Texas. They have a huge one in San Antonio, 60 miles away. They have them in every state, giant compounds with black helicopters and men with guns and machine guns recording everything. And if you go and put a camera on it, they come out and arrest you. And then the media won't cover it because those bases don't exist. They're right next to a Walmart in San Antonio. Thousands of acres, giant compounds, helicopters, men with masks on. None of it exists. And then I'm going, it exists. They're like, crazy man. There's no NSA. There's no spying. There's no torture. There's no corruption. The government loves you. Everything's fine. Piers Morgan cares about you. I'm here to tell everybody something right now. I'm here to tell all the globalists and all the sellouts, the answer to your 1984 tyranny is 1776! 1776! 1776! 1776! And by the way, 1776 is not about America versus England. The Parliament almost voted to give freedom to the colonies, and the king came down and demanded they declare war. The fight in the colonies was a 1,000-year war they'd had in these isles for freedom in England, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, everywhere. It's a human fight for the Magna Carta that Tony Blair, when he first got elected, declared he would kill. That is treason. You want to know why you're a slave? They're trying to kill your Magna Carta, your due process, so they're above the law. And that's why we're here. The New World Order is not above the law. And liberty is rising!
Right now, though, Facebook, Apple, Google, YouTube, Skype. It's just been revealed that almost all of those networks have a back passage, as it were, in from the US government, from the NSA. What would you say to individuals in terms of what this means about the relationship with the state?
Google is the state. Facebook is the state. Google was set up with funding from In-Q-Tel and the CIA. That's mainstream news. But government has more scrutiny on it than private corporations, so they set up these subgroups under it so that they can then claim that they have corporate deniability. Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of them serve the global corporate interest. They're spying on everybody. Google's on record driving around with Google cars, stealing everyone's data, breaking into passcodes. Meanwhile, you do that with some cops, you go to jail in the UK. That's just because the low-level cops aren't supposed to get into the big-time game of spying on people, hacking phones. You hack phones, you go to jail. You spy on everybody illegally, well, they make you king.
Do you have a problem with them using this technology to root out security problems?
The Al-Qaeda threat is run by the globalists. They created them on record. They ran them in Libya. They run them in Syria. The New World Order is staging the bombings in India. It's provocatoring the bombings here. It is going out and finding mentally ill people in every case, even the New York Times reports, and they're totally discredited, but they have to admit that our government has created over 100 fake terror attacks by going out and finding mentally ill people. They use the pretext of a terror threat to spy on everyone, and now it turns out it's to spy on constitutionalists, nationalists, people that love freedom. Members of Congress are being spied on by the NSA. Why? Because they're Al-Qaeda? No. Big Brother uses the excuse of Al-Qaeda that they run to take our liberty. And we're now at a critical crossroads because all this is coming out. And if people make the decision collectively to say, well, that's okay, then we go deep into tyranny. We're at that crossroads where all this open evil either wakes us up and we reverse the pendulum from tyranny back to liberty, or we just kind of give into it and go, okay, Bob got disappeared because, you know, he might have been a security threat, or, yeah, they're spying on you. That's to keep us safe. This is pure classical authoritarianism, and it has come to the United States. It has come to England. It has come to Europe.
Well, you seem to have won the argument amongst this audience, but the masses don't seem to care about their privacy being taken.
You don't speak for the mass.
I don't speak for them, but I'm saying by evidence they seem to put whatever, you know, all of their personal data on Facebook for free forever. All of the tweets seem to be going out
because
there.
They were promised by Google and all of them that they weren't saving it. But now that they're discovering that they were lied to, they are becoming angry. And the average person is doing nothing wrong, so they feel like, well, that's okay, the government's nice. But now they find out the government's corrupt and run by private piratical interest, and now people are upset saying, I don't want you to have my data.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Ready to go? Yeah, we're late.
All right, that's Alex Jones yesterday at Bilderberg with an interview talking about data and the stealing of it, the stealing of the American people's data. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk to Gordon.
So, now let's go in to have a look at an interesting clip on YouTube that I found. Again, it's designed to be viewed, so I'll have to kind of talk you through it while it's there. But it's basically candidate Obama versus President Obama. What he said pre-election and post-election. So I'll talk you through it and see if it can be transferred over to radio. Okay. So this is the talking that he used to do when he was a candidate trying to be elected, and now what he says side by side to it now that he's an actual president. And this was done very recently.
Works. Our Constitution works. We will again...
This is him as a candidate in 2007.
Set an example for the world that the law is not subject to the whims of stubborn rulers and that justice is not arbitrary. This administration acts like violating civil liberties is the way to enhance our security. It is not. There are no shortcuts to protecting America.
But my assessment and my team's assessment...
And now we switch to President Obama, June 7th, 2013.
Was that they help us prevent terrorist attacks.
This administration also puts forward a false choice between the liberties we cherish and the security we provide.
Can you guess which one that was? Yep, that was candidate Obama, and now we're switching back to President Obama.
You can't have 100% security and also then have 100% privacy and zero inconvenience, we're going to have to make some choices as a society.
And now back to candidate Obama.
I will provide our intelligence and law enforcement agencies with the tools they need to track and take out the terrorists without undermining our Constitution and our freedom. That means no more illegal wiretapping of American citizens.
Oh, I don't need to explain to you the significance of that statement given the weekend's events, do I?
No more national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime.
Oops. Yet again, there's another one.
No more tracking citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war. No more ignoring the law when it is inconvenient.
I can see why people voted for him. He's saying all the stuff that I like. Didn't do any of it, though, did he? And, he was even worse than George Bush, who was himself, like both Obama and George Bush, as we've covered in previous shows, go beyondnews.co.uk, and you can see the New York Times article where they say the bipartisan subcommittee of both Republicans and Democrats said they should be indicted for war crimes, both of them.
That is not who we are. And it's not what is necessary to defeat the terrorists.
And now we're back to President Obama, and he is referring at this point to the NSA surveillance program that's been all over the mainstream news over the weekend.
Is that in evaluating these programs, they make a difference in our capacity to anticipate and prevent possible terrorist activity. In the abstract, you can complain about Big Brother and how this is a potential program run amok. But when you actually look at the details, then I think we've struck the right balance.
So there you go. I'll see if I can now bring up an article for you, which was all about whether... No, it doesn't look like it. I'll just go straight to the Graham Hancock interview. Graham Hancock, Dr. Graham Hancock, gave a speech at a TED conference. Have a look at what they are. They're sort of speakers all over the world, and they had one censored. They didn't put it out, so this is him talking about it. I'm going to skip through a fair old amount at the start because, to be honest, it waffles on a hell of a large amount. So I'll see if I can find the right place for it.
5 or 6. Then I read some books by... Welcome Graham Hancock to the show tonight. Let me just say this, that this is a sacred space that I hold here. We do not apologize. Graham knows as well as I do the pains of having to footnote everything and to defend that because of the really, really bad ways in which we have been brutally attacked over the years for our work. He's free to talk about that, but I know that we have shared that experience. But this is a place where we know we are winning, and that's the way we talk, and that's the way we're going to approach this show tonight. And I feel like I've talked too long already. Graham Hancock, welcome to our lodge. Welcome to join all of us on the Lifeboat Hour in a new consciousness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. It's good to be amongst friends. I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate this connection with you.
Oh, absolutely, sir. We got a lot of work to do tonight. So before I'm going to ask you to speak for yourself here, because I believe we can save time before we get to other really important issues. For those of you who don't know what TED is, here's what Wikipedia has to say. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. It's a global set of conferences owned by the private, non-profit Sapling Foundation, formed to disseminate, quote, ideas worth spreading. Founded in 1984. They've done, everything. And Bill Clinton, Al Gore, Bill Gates, a lot of people whose names are anathema to me. And I have never had great respect for their work, having seen much of my work turn up in other presentations there. But when Ted had Graham on, it became the presentation which I played on the show last week. And I'm assuming, for the sake of discussion, that everybody is familiar with that brilliant piece of oration that so sums up where we are right now. So that's who Ted is. Now, with that, Graham, in your own words, because that'll save time, can you take us briefly through how the TED thing came about, how it went, and what's happened since? I'll let you tell that story.
Sure, absolutely. It's been an extraordinary and strange experience altogether. Because I've been on the outside and on the margins of things for very many years, and TED is kind of, although they say that they're in the business of transmitting challenging ideas, they're kind of mainstream and central. So I was very surprised to get an invitation to speak at a TED conference. Now, to be clear, this was what is called a TEDx conference. That's, there's the main TED conference, which is one thing, and then there's TEDx conferences. I'm going to use their language, which take the TED brand. They speak of themselves as a brand, like a can of beans or a motor car, which take the TED brand, but they're independently organized conferences which occur all over the world. And a group of good-hearted, open-minded students in London got together and decided to create a conference that was going to challenge existing paradigms, which they felt was very much within the ethos of TED as spreading new and challenging ideas. And they invited me to be one of the speakers at that conference. And amongst others, they invited my friend Rupert Sheldrake to be a speaker at that conference. Rupert Sheldrake is a scientist, but he's been very critical of some mainstream science, and he's done excellent work on what are regarded by mainstream scientists as fringe topics, such as telepathy, such as the sense of being stared at. He's written a book about dogs who know when their owners are coming home before their owners even know when they're coming home. This kind of thing. So, interesting science that he's done. So he was another one of the speakers. And when I saw that Rupert was going to be there, I thought...
Now, again, I'd just like to point out, as I always say, go and look at Graham's work for itself. Just because I air some of his work doesn't mean I agree with all of it. But I'm here at Beyond the News to bring you different points of view that the mainstream doesn't cover, and I let you make up your own mind on things, and that's what I'm here to do. Go look at the research, go and look at it for yourself, make up your own mind, but I'm here to point out that this research does exist and it isn't being covered on the mainstream news, and here to let you make up your own minds, really.
Well, great. This is going to be a very interesting event, and I decided that I was happy to speak at it. And it was a significant challenge because I was required to present a talk. My subject was going to be consciousness, which is a subject that I've been deeply involved with for many, many years. And I was required to present a talk in 18 minutes. And I took this, it's much easier to talk for an hour than it is to talk for 18 minutes.
Oh, indeed. I've had that experience many times. You really have to focus.
You've really got to focus, and you've got to be sure you don't make missteps because you don't have time to go back and correct your errors. It's a very, very fast-moving situation. And I conscientiously, for a month, worked up and developed this talk called The War on Consciousness, because I do believe that is what is going on in our society today. Our society values only one specific kind of consciousness, which is what I call the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. And our society allows us little holidays from that state of consciousness with alcohol and tobacco and coffee and sugar, and one or two other pharmacological drugs that are approved.
Yes.
But otherwise, we're not allowed to explore any other states of consciousness. And in fact, our society will send us to prison if we exercise our sovereign right as adults to explore the mysteries of our own consciousness by using, for example, psychedelics. I mean, what an unbelievable transgression on adult sovereignty it is for a government to tell us that we may not have certain experiences in the privacy of our own homes, in the inner sanctum of our own consciousness. And I always say, let's get this clear, guys. If we are not allowed to be sovereign over our own consciousness, then we're not sovereign over anything.
No.
And we do not have any meaningful freedom. So this is quite a radical message that TED were inviting me to come on board and speak about.
Yeah. Now let me just do a little sidebar here, and say that the kernel or the grain of sand in the pearl of your speech was Mother Ayahuasca. And yes. I will say, for the record, which I have said it again, but I will say that I maintain the public position that I have done one journey with a substance called 5-MeO-DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is the root drug of Mother Ayahuasca, a God-given, spirit-given psychedelic substance.
Now, I'd like to add that I never have, and I'm not advocating that anyone should. I'm just saying that I'm here to present to you Dr. Graham Hancock. He's an expert on history. He has theories that mainstream agree with. He has some that mainstream disagree with. But he's an intelligent guy with some interesting views. And he's being interviewed by, I think, Michael C. Ruppert, who I'm not familiar with, I'll be honest. I mainly got this interview for Graham Hancock, I'll be honest with that. So make up your own minds. I'm advocating and promoting nothing. I'm just bringing you information that you may not hear on the mainstream. That's all I'm doing.
And so has my friend Joe Rogan, and I know that you have been a guest on Joe's show. And we, in a sense, if you will, follow not only from the tradition of many shamans going back and grandfathers many tens of thousands of years, but also in the footsteps of people like Terence McKenna and others. I wanted to put that out just for
yes.
disclosure.
And I'll pick you up on that sidebar, and I will say that ayahuasca, which is an indigenous visionary brew of the Amazon jungle, which has been in use for thousands of years in the Amazon, has become a very important part of my life. I have just this year completed my 50th journey with ayahuasca. I've had 11 journeys with DMT, smoked DMT as well. DMT is the active ingredient of ayahuasca, but DMT is not normally accessible orally. We normally have to smoke it because there's an enzyme in our stomachs called monoamine oxidase that switches off DMT on contact. But in the Amazon, those clever shamans of the Amazon have got round this problem. They've created an orally active form of DMT by mixing together two plants, one of which contains DMT and the other which contains a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. It's quite advanced chemistry, actually, that they're doing down there in the Amazon, and the result is a highly psychoactive oral brew that produces a journey that lasts for about 4 hours, whereas, as you know, smoked DMT is a much shorter journey.
Yeah, my 5-MeO journey was 2 hours as opposed to a standard DMT journey, and I should add,
a standard DMT journey, because 5-MeO DMT and NN-DMT are somewhat different things. A standard DMT journey, smoked DMT, is 12 to 15 minutes.
Yeah. But I want to emphasize.
So what we're dealing with DMT is a substance which is, evokes gasps of horror from the thought police in our society all around the world, and which is a Schedule I drug and which is highly illegal. But here it is, the active ingredient of an ancient and sacred brew, which shamans of the Amazon believe brings us into contact with other realms and other intelligences and other entities that they call the spirit world. And I, initially, because I wanted to research this subject for a book that I wrote some years ago, a book called Supernatural, I had to go down to the Amazon and experience this extraordinary brew. And what's happened since I had those experiences for research is that I found it's had such a transformatory effect on my life and has made me rethink many of my fundamental ideas about the nature of reality that I've continued to work with ayahuasca.
Now, I'd like to add that I'll be carrying on this interview later on to next week's show, but I'll also be bringing up the other point of view on Graham, which kind of substantiates what he goes on to say now. I'm going to be bringing up some testimonies from quantum physicists who've studied quantum mechanics and the effect of consciousness upon that. I'll be looking into that alongside the remainder of this show with Graham Hancock. We'll just finish it up there. But the point I wanted to make is he's going on to talk about the talk that was censored, and anything where there's a censorship by the establishment, because TED is an establishment vehicle. I like to point out that there's censorship, and I like to hear what he was going to say. Don't necessarily agree with it. It just, when anyone tells me that I can't hear that, I want to know what was said. I've just got an inquisitive mind like that. So I just thought I'd bring you this interview to let you know that. And you can agree or disagree with what he's saying. You'll find that reasonable, what we know about the fundamental nature of reality from quantum physicists, as we'll look at next week, is it is impossible to passively observe the universe. Your consciousness has an effect on particles at the subatomic level. In effect, the universe knows we're here, and you can prove this in an experiment known as the double slit experiment, in which case the wave function of subatomic particles collapses and they become matter. So we'll cover that there. So keep an open mind with what you hear, and I'll bring you the quantum physics behind it on next week's show. So let's continue with Graham Hancock.
Have 5 or 6 ayahuasca journeys every year.
I have had an observation, Graham, as a result of this, and we'll get back to the TED story. I'm sure most are familiar with it, that not only your presentation, but Rupert Sheldrake's and several others, and I find some amazing threads of consistency between all those presentations, have been systematically taken away from TED.
Well, look, can I just speak on that? Because,
sure.
Okay, TEDx did the conference. I spoke at the conference. My talk was put up on the TEDx YouTube channel, okay, and it ran there for 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, it gathered 132,000 views. And the talk was clearly popular. It was controversial. There was a lot of discussion around it, which is very healthy. Free individuals were choosing to go and listen to that talk and make up their own minds about it. And some people liked it and some people hated it, and they were debating in the comments. And that is exactly what should happen in a free and open society. And then TED, the organization, the big brand, which is funded by huge pharmaceutical companies and Xerox and all sorts of people like that, then TED suddenly stepped up and said, we are not going to allow people to see this talk anymore. We are going to take it offline. We are going to take it off the TED YouTube channel because, quote unquote, it is not scientific. And they did the same on the same day with Rupert Sheldrake's talk.
Yes.
And what a patronizing attitude to the adult population of the world, that adults are not capable of making up their own minds about the merits of a talk. TED must take that decision for them and just actually take the talk out of circulation whatsoever. And I must say, this made me extremely annoyed. Well, and it is, I think, an insult to the intelligence of reasonable, thoughtful adults everywhere that TED have behaved in this way. And I think it's actually a significant issue in our society today that we have a kind of thought police operating, which seeks to... It's ironic that my talk was called The War on Consciousness.
Yes.
Because actually what it's about is a thought police that seeks to control our consciousness, mind control in our society. And I've now seen that applied directly to my own talk by TED taking it offline.
I have, I'm holding in my hand, Graham Hancock, right now, a book called The Master Game, written by yourself and Mr. Robert Boval, which led me to some amazing insights, and one of which was, as I have looked back, I've been on a spiritual path for 30-some years, and I've studied a great many criminal activities and persecutions, but one of the things that I find in common, especially from this book, was I saw a common theme behind all of the persecutions, the genocides, the enslavements, the infection, the destruction, systematic as applied by the Catholic Church, as applied by human industrial civilization, which is that anything that had an earth-based philosophy was targeted, and that would include even Gnostic Christians, Hermetic Christians. And what I see here is a parallel in this information that is being trying to be excised from TED there is a consistency, and I've been a warrior my whole life. You know, I've been out here spitting in their faces for a long time, and what I see here is a consistent theme, and what I'm sensing is, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing the beast howl. I think a nerve has been struck. Do you feel that?
I totally think a nerve has been struck. It's absolutely the case. A nerve has been struck, and that nerve is the arrogant notion of relatively small groups of people that they have the right to control our thinking.
Yes.
And clearly, my presentation on TED was challenging to that idea of theirs. And rather than debate me, they just decided to take me offline. But, you know, they'd forgotten something. Mm-hmm. They'd forgotten that now today is not the 1980s or even the early 1990s.
Exactly.
Now today we have the Internet. We have an instrument for the free expression of views. And all around the world, millions and billions of people are refusing to wear that chain around their neck anymore and are refusing to be told what to think. And I've been heartened and encouraged, and my heart has been warmed by the fantastic response that the global community on the Internet and that my social network community on my Facebook pages has given to me to turn against TED and tell them, we are not going to put up with that shit anymore, TED. We are not going to put up with it. We are free individuals, and we are going to think what we want to think, and you will not tell us what to think. And I've been so encouraged by that, and I think that...
Oopsie daisy.
You know, this is one sign amongst many that the horrendous system of control that has suppressed the human spirit for so long and that has operated so powerfully in our societies is just falling apart, breaking apart, and that something new and wonderful is being birthed. And I think we should all feel grateful to be part of the birth pangs of a new tomorrow.
Speaking from a spiritual standpoint, I just had a minor vision in my head, a vision in my head of George Orwell and Terence McKenna dancing an Irish jig together, twirling each other around. There is an awakening underway, and this goes back to the theme that I'm painting. Now, as I look through the systematic persecution, murder, annihilation, torture, rape, all these words need to be said. We have to bear witness to this. Of all of the ancestors for the last 5,000 or 6,000 years since a God Jehovah separated us from everything else, whether you call yourself Lakota or Hopi or Bushman or Buddhist or Hindu or any Druid or pagan or Wiccan, whatever you call yourself, understanding the interconnectedness of all things, we are all Gaian now.
Yes.
And I believe that Gaian consciousness is alive and well, especially in this lodge that we're holding tonight. And I feel that very strongly, and I'm sensing that you do too, that we're in motion now, that things are...
I feel it very strongly, and this is part of the mystery of ayahuasca, and it's part of what Ted didn't like about my talk, because I talked a lot about ayahuasca in that talk. And I was careful in what I said to make clear that I'm not claiming any reality status for these visions. I myself believe that the visions are highly meaningful and real, but I don't claim or insist that others must believe that. I'm simply reporting what people experience all around the world, and it's a very curious thing as the Amazon jungle.
That's where we're going to leave it for this week. I don't really subscribe to that Gaia theory personally, but I want to put I put stuff on air that I don't necessarily agree with, just because I want others to hear about it and start thinking outside the box. That's where I stand. I stand more in the nature of consciousness from the quantum mechanics view that we'll get into on next week's show. So thank you ever so much for joining us. I've been Jim Grant. BeyondTheNews.co.uk. Check us out online. Check us out on Facebook. See you next Wednesday on Radio Lewis between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. Or you can download our shows on Spreaker, SPR. It begins. Okay, thank you very much. Cheers.